Hey everyone, welcome to the first JST Compete podcast of 2021. Today I've got Ste and Phil Biscard with myself, Jack Cornplate. We're going to be going through communication today, in particular with us coaches, whether you're on an individual program or on the competition programs. Okay. So to kick things off, how are you boys doing?
Yeah, all good. A little bit spangled, but we're doing good.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Cool. So
all
let's
good.
just start off with, why is it important to have this communication between the athletes and us coaches?
Yeah, I think the first thing that springs to my mind is whenever we get a question off anyone on the program, and it literally could just be like any question. So it could be asking some feedback of a lift or some advice around kind of lifestyle, or how to approach the training sessions. Like if they're going for a patch of training where they're not feeling great, whatever the question is, if we then have a backlog of messages from them previously and also a backlog of their notes in their training schedule of how they've done in training, then before we go down and sit down and start asking them questions back, we as coaches can just have a 10-minute look over any conversations we've had previously, and then another 10-minute look just over the most recent performances, and then already we can kind of build a picture of that athlete if we're not someone who have seen kind of like face to face or in person many times before, and then straight away, rather than just guessing issues that might be happening and kind of suggesting things, we can actually base our answers off real life data that they have given us. So straight away it just improves how much we can help as coaches, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Phil, you obviously have been both a JST athlete and a JST coach in the past. What are your thoughts? Let's kind of look at the athlete side a little bit first. Kind of saying the question, why was it important to you, that communication?
I think it's a very individual characteristic if someone is naturally interested in what's going on, and it's almost like demanding information from the coach. I've always been a guy that needed to know what was going on at certain times during the year. So I remember back in the day when Steve was coaching me, I was on his back constantly on what is going on, why we're doing this. Sometimes he's right, I think this is shit, we got to do something else. And he was always jumping back and forth between my my crisis of doing CrossFit. But at the end of the day, when I gave expression on what I was thinking, what I was doing all the time, I think even though in the moment it was kind of maybe stressful for him, it gave him a lot more information to work out from and to almost guide me through what was going to be the plan going forward.
And we're going to go into a bit more detail in that in a minute, but I think it's just important to note that not every athlete will be like you either. You're probably a person that you need to kind of play the piano for them a little bit and kind of tell them the information, like you say, you get on the back and you need that kind of constant information to know what's going on. Whereas some athletes are happy to kind of get on with it a little bit, aren't they?
I think it does, like you say, it does take a certain personality, a certain person who's happy to sit there for 10 minutes after the training session and type in how that training session has gone. Although I'm one, for example, if there's one regret I've got over the last, I've done CrossFit 10 years. 10 years is that I've not recorded my results. Because I've not recorded it, I could probably tell you my times and scores that I've had on big workouts or main workouts or main lifts or whatever. But I would love to have looked back now for the last 10 years and just literally roll through 10 years of results through my training. More so now, into a point where currently I'm getting back into training and I'm trying to figure out am I close to being where I've been previously, and I'm just trying to remember rather than I can go back and go like 2016, I did this way or this time, and it felt like this, and I can just repeat that session, and I've got actual data, like we said before, to go back to and
compare again.
Compare. Whereas now it's just literally just me in my own head. So although I'm not the type of person that would just sit there and record everything back, I wish that I had forced that routine into myself like early doors, so that I am that type of person, because I'm probably only that type of person now because I'm not in the routine through training. So if there's any point that anyone can start, like just start doing it. Get yourself, just treat it as the last part of your training session. Is the next to the last part F is record your shit. Even if it's just take a picture of the whiteboard, or take a picture if you put it in your notepad, take a picture and put it in if you can't be bothered to type it in again. Yeah.
So just so going back to kind of you and Phil, Steve, obviously you kind of individually programmed for him for a number of years. I can't remember the exact span of years that it was.
2014.
Yeah, 3 years
to
total.
18, maybe.
Yeah, 4 years possibly then.
Yeah. So what kind of, you being his coach, what were kind of the, what did you kind of set out, or what expectations did you have on, Phil as the athlete, to kind of,
Yeah, so our the coach-athlete relationship kind of developed because in the initial stages, Philip was part of the Bulgarian trio who all joined at the same time. It was Phil, Mike, and Andre. So because they trained every day with each other, it was kind of a program for all three of them. And after we went through like one full season, or like a full 12-month period, it was obvious that like Mike reacted completely different to certain types of training than Phil, and Andre also different. And there's probably Phil and Mike were probably like so much different that that's what made it like really, really obvious. Mike would just like react to any conditioning within like 2 weeks and is back to kind of open, ready, like straight away. Whereas that, as we found, that wasn't the case for Phil. So it was, I can't remember the year either, but as we kind of got through another season, it was like, right, okay, we need to approach this different. And that's when conversations, obviously we set up an individual program for Phil, and that's where conversations started happening as how do we go about changing the direction that we approach it. And look, and my Phil said it could be stressful for me, but it wasn't. I didn't find it stressful, and I don't find it stressful. To me, when an athlete is in communication and is saying things like, "This isn't working. Like we need to change this up," it's like it's not a defense mechanism to me. I don't go into defense mechanism and say, "No, you must do this, this, and this." It's listen what they've got to say and just learn from like what they're saying, and like take the ownership, and can we adapt training and find a new way and find new methods to get to the end goal where we want to be.
I think that's a really important point to pick up on, because I've had a few of my athletes like say that I feel like if I message you too much, like I'm getting, I'm kind of becoming a bit of a burden, like you said, and it's like, no, the more information you actually give me, the easier it makes this relationship, and makes my job easier as well. If you're,
I think it's literally our job. Okay, it's literally our career. It's like message us and fucking tell us, because we can't we can't just guess.
And we actually enjoy at the same time.
Yeah, like we enjoy it, and like when we sit down to like write through the next few weeks of programs, like we need something to base off how the last few weeks of programming has gone to be able to, like, it's not just like sit down and just type away a lot of stuff and hope that it works. Like, we need the feedback on that one-to-one level to be able to mold the next few weeks.
So Phil, obviously being the athlete, what kind of things were you expecting from Ste? Kind of how did the relationship work? How much did were you talking to him? Goals wise, like how did that sort of thing work? Or was there any particular thing that stuck out to you and you thought, that's a really big thing, like I needed from a coach?
I think the 2 first years I did Steve's programming as a part of the Bulgarian trio, and the first year when I completed the Open, it was obvious to me that I needed to do something else to be able to compete at the regionals. But then again, I thought, okay, I haven't been doing it for that long a period of time. So I gave it another year, completely same result, gave the effort, gave the training what I needed to do. And I remember, like, vividly, I just wrote him like, this is stupid. Like, we need to do something completely different. And I actually started reading a lot about it myself, and I came with all these suggestions to, like, this is what I think could be a possible plan for it. And like, I initially gave him the thoughts and ideas of what I thought would be a way to go about it. And I just said, do you think this makes sense? And he said, sure, let's fucking go for it. And he pretty much programmed the whole thing out from a point of view that I like kind of bought into. I think the most important thing is that the athlete has to buy into it. And if you program something for the athlete that doesn't make sense in their head, like, it's not going to provide the results you're going to be at. So the whole aspect of the 2018 season for me sprung out from me actually demanding something from Ste. And I think that's the important point to take away from this, that you have to demand something of the coach.
I definitely agree with you there. I feel like, the athlete if the athlete really wants it, the athlete has to take the initiative to take that step to, approach the coach and be like, look, something kind of needs to change. And then obviously the coach knows the athlete is serious about it. They want to put the time and the commitment into it. Like, if the athlete's giving that to the coaches want to, give that same amount of effort back. That time and effort that the athlete's willing to put in, the coach wants to put in as well.
I think it's also a barrier when we talk about remote coaching. So obviously Philip was in a different country, he was in Denmark, and I was in England. So the amount of times we saw each other, or I saw Phil, going through full training sessions was, probably less than 10 times, less than 5 times. I mean, probably the only time I would have seen it was when we trained together previously, before becoming a coach. Obviously you get workout videos and you get, little snippets, but it doesn't give you the full picture as if you were with someone day to day. If I was with him day to day, then maybe like it wouldn't, the whole process would have happened a bit quicker. But this is, it's remote coaching, and to be able to make that process as quick is what Phil said, is that you have to be kind of proactive and just demand and tell them results, tell them what you think, tell them how it's going, and to keep constant feedback as if you were side by side in a gym day to day with each other. Like, the barrier is that it's remote, it's over Zoom sometimes, most of the time, or over texts. But you can make that as close to being in person, as long as you do what Phil said there, and just kind of be proactive and demand.
Yeah.
Like, not so much demanding. It sounds a bit like diva-ish, but like, like just give them everything that you want, rather than letting things boil in your head and not say anything, be quiet. Just get everything out, and then the coach can work with everything that's being said and come up with the best solution.
Yeah. So kind of going from that, so obviously, Phil, you kind of like took the initiative and said to Ste, look, I kind of want take things kind of the next step. The goal was regionals, obviously. Like on a day-to-day basis from that point on, were you in contact every day or every few days? How did it kind of roll from there?
I think I spoke to him at least once a week, but when we spoke in a lot more effective kind of way. I think there's value to communication if it has meaning and you have something to base it out from.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's dangerous to just communicate to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
But every time me and Steve we like talked, it had meaning and it had an impact on what I was doing. So I think we spoke like once a week, and we did it pretty intensely in the sense of what we discussed. I pretty much just discussed how it felt, what felt good. Sometimes I didn't have the actual implements that I needed, and just corrected it to what makes sense. But yeah, just like a weekly, very very intense discussion about what happened.
And did you like record your results somehow? Like how did he see your results daily, or in that call at the end of the week, did you kind of discuss key points? Or...
I just remember being smackered all the time and just writing him, I'm completely destroyed, and he says, yeah, it's fine, just keep on going. And that's the thing, I never doubted Ste at any point, but I also knew, and he also knew, that we had to do something differently. So I think it was just that reassurance, and sometimes you have to give in to the athletes, and it's a balancing act, but sometimes you have to give in to the athlete of, okay, I get your point and we're going to do this, but at some point you also need to be very clear and concise on, okay, I know that you're being completely destroyed from the thing you're doing now, but you got to stick to what you're doing and see this plan through.
Yeah.
So
I think that was the good balance that we had there. Was like, you have the coach-athlete relationship where, it should go two ways, but then there needs to be a point of certain times of the year, or certain, points of training sessions where just like the coach is just telling the athlete, and it becomes more of a one-way thing. But then it doesn't mean that it can't go back to two-way at some point. So there is kind of still that respect to the coach and vice versa. But then eventually there's still a respect to the athlete from the coach to be able to listen and integrate kind of, how they're feeling and what they're doing. Is a fine line, I guess, but it's a good, once you get the balance right, I think it makes most relationships with a coach and athlete successful.
I just want to kind of switch a little bit now. So obviously back then we used the old JST website, didn't we? Which was quite basic. And now we use Fitter.
Yeah.
Do you just want to kind of talk about a little bit about kind of how it's made things easier for coaches, and obviously for us to talk to our athletes and the athletes on the program?
Yeah, I recorded a very short screen recording just before this call, actually, and it was more so to the guys that are on a competition program, on exactly like what, because they just see on the client side of Fitter, they just see the program's subscribed to, they can record the results, boom. On the coach side, as you guys will know, there's a lot more in-depth detail, and from what we see from like the client list and the performances that are being recorded. So when we log on to an individual client's program and we see their calendar, on the left side in one view, we've got the review mode, so we can see the results that they've recorded. On the right side, we've got the build mode, so we can type in next week. So we can be reading last week and type in next week just in one kind of a glance, which really helps like build. It helps make sure that whatever's being recorded by the athlete is being integrated, rather than it being a bit of like a longer demanding process that athletes might think it is on their side, which might stop them from writing in the notes. But now it's literally just read it, take the note, listen to what they're saying, either ignore it or take it on, and build the next week. But it's literally there, and it's so simple.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same setup on a group program. We can see everyone's results as we scroll down and read through them there. As we're on the right side, we can build the next few weeks of programming. So for us as coaches, like when you say it's a burden, like it's not a burden. It actually makes things way easier when you take into consider on our side how it looks. So yeah.
Phil, so when you start up with a client, what initially, what do you kind of say to them? Like, obviously you want them to record results. Do you straight up just say, look, you have to record results? So that any other expectations you kind of set at the start, or do you do it a few weeks in? How do you work?
It has changed a lot over the years, and I've discovered more and more, the more athletes I've gone through, that you need to set them as early as possible. It's very hard to change behaviors once they're set. So once you have someone going for a program, and let's say 1 year, and they're used to not recording the results every day, every week, and so forth, it's just very hard to make them convinced on changing things, because it's kind of working, but it's not at the same time. So what I've done is, when I have the initial consultation with a new client coming on board, I always said one of the most important things that I highlight is set clear expectations on what they demand from me. So I asked them, what are you expecting from me as a coach when we go into this remote relationship? They have all these different things that they want to make sure is covered. But then where I think some coaches lack in their way of coaching is they don't necessarily have any demands of the athlete also, because when the client is actually paying you for a product or a service that you provide to them, they expect you to almost do all the work for them and almost take their hand and guide them through all the training that you have to do. But I always say, like, for this to work, for this remote client coach relation to actually work, I have to demand from you to actually be doing this, recording your results, making sure that you keep me updated and all those things, making sure that I know what's going on in your life. Are you stressed? Are you sick? All those kind of things that have an influence on what's going into the programming. So I think if there's one thing that's important, it is to set very clear expectation, both from what they expect from you, but also very importantly, what I expect from them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Just leading on from that as well, like in the past, obviously when I was a more inexperienced coach at that point, athletes would be doing the program and they wouldn't be recording results, and you don't know if they've actually done something or not, but you still put the progression in for the next week, but they might not have done that the first week. So
Yeah,
there's no idea kind of what's going on, if it's going well, if they're doing it right. Like you say, it just makes our job so much harder when there's no results there or anything at all, really. So
I think one thing that I have in conversation with guys who start with me is that because obviously we're remote again, and the whole situation I said before, where you don't see them every day. It's just, if you record a lifting session, or you've got something that you feel like you're struggling with, just record, and it's snatching, for example, and there's 20 snatches in that session. Just record as many of those lifts as possible. Maybe not every one, every other, and just drop them into WhatsApp, or just drop them in, and so have the videos there, and just do that for as many exercises and as many things as you want. Just send the videos, and don't expect from me that I'm going to sit there and just like make a reply and give a feedback for every single video. But what that does for me is just helps me create a picture of how you're moving, first of all, how mechanics are going, the technique of whatever it is you're doing, and just make some judgments, just constant judgments. If I'm just getting videos, 3 to 5 videos a day, it's crossing that barrier, like I said before, of it basically being like I'm there in the session with you. It's just a bit of a delayed response when I get a chance to sit down and just go through every video. And that for me is like one of the most valuable things with individual programming, is just to just continuously see if what we're doing is having an impact. And any changes that we're making, if it's actually a positive change, rather than just waiting for a competition to come around and get an actual performance feedback there. Like, we can see more day-to-day little intricacies of how are they getting better.
Now we've kind of predominantly been talking about, individual coaching there really, but more recently, or since kind of moving on to Fitter, it's enabled us to offer some more services, which has been great. We've been able to kind of look at people's results easier, look at people's videos easier. Steve, do you just want to kind of give us a bit of an overview of what we offer the people on the competition programs as well, and like the coaching that they get off us, so we can make the most of it?
I think, us three and the whole team, you get together fairly often, and we go around and say, like, what is it we're doing? How's the service that we're providing? How is it going down? Like, is it being effective? And the one thing we always try and make sure is that even on the competition program, so if you're on like one of the bias programs or compete, you're getting as close to, we want to try and get those guys as close to having a personal or an individualized experience as possible, without them having to, make the jump to 3, 4, 5 times the price that they're paying. Like, we want to create the value in those programs, so that they're getting nearly what they could get if it was a one-to-one. It's not quite as effective, but it would suit their budget for starters, but also their kind of lifestyle and how they want to approach, training in their life as general. So not being as like full on with this one coach, but they can still get the benefits as close to being as possible, to being able to get an answer from a coach within 24 hours, to being able to send a video and see some, get some feedback, to be able to follow individualized weights or paces or rep schemes based off what they're capable of, and to be able even to go down the level where I can choose. It's why we have the biases, that to choose strength, engine, gymnastics, or all-rounder, to go down the route based off conversations with you, Jack, which are going to be the best route for them to take. And then let's say they go down into the engine bias program, and even then when they go into the engine bias program, we're giving them options as to, first of all, educating them on different energy systems, and then giving them the option of what type of engine session for them to pick on that day based off what limits their performance. So all in all, with the whole kind of service that we're giving them in terms of the communication and the feedback, as long as they give it to us and reach out to us, and the kind of direction that they can take and the programming and how they can work the programming around, it really does get pretty close to the experience that you might get with an individual program.
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasise that we do respond to all our athletes within 24 hours, and Kyle is on shift every day to reply to questions. If he needs to, he passes the videos or some questions on to us to reply. Through the day, me and Phil are kind of looking at the inbox as well to kind of see if there's anyone needs, a bit of feedback or questions responding to as well. Like, I think it's important that all the athletes know that we are on hand during the day to help them out. And when they do send videos, it is specific feedback that we can give them, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's important when Phil said about demanding, like, there's a service, that is a service that we offer. You ask us a question, we say we'll get back within 24 hours. There's a little sometimes grey area on it, because Kyle doesn't do shifts on a Saturday, and sometimes Saturday's a bit hectic. So like, maybe if you ask something Friday night, Sunday morning, it's going to be like reply to, but like, that's what we offer. So first of all, if you've asked us a question, And it's worth pointing out, ask us it in an inbox rather than in the communities, because they don't get checked as in-depth as the inboxes do. And we've not replied. Ask us again. Let's say, excuse me, excuse me, mister. You've not replied to my message, because that's what we're here for. That's part of service, part of subscription. Just make the most of it.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Is there anything else you guys would like to kind of cover with regards to communication, like talking to us coaches, anything at all?
I think we've been talking a lot about making it easier for us. But at the end of the day, it's all about making it easier for them, more enjoyable. If there's something about the training that you don't necessarily enjoy or like, you can always ask, what could I do instead to make it more enjoyable? If it's performance-wise, if I can't seem to get into an overhead squat position, ask us what we can do instead to maybe improve those positions. So at the end of the day, when you reach out to us, it's all about making it easier, more fun, or more effective for you as a client on the JST one. But it all starts with you asking the question, because we can read minds. I wish we could, but we can't read minds all the time. So it starts there.
Yeah.
So, and it's probably worth finishing at the point. I literally, just before this, we recorded this podcast, I dropped in all of the communities the news that the Fitter app is available. So it's a lot easier just to, press a couple of buttons now and record your performances. So yeah, we've just made that little barrier of recording your training a little bit easier. So no excuses. It's not even an excuse for me anymore. If I promise to do it, then everyone else has to promise to do
it. Cool. Just to wrap it all up.
Yeah.
Drop us messages if you need to. Inbox on Fitter. Yeah. Anything that you want to check out with? Anything you want to plug before we go?
No, just usual. Again, if there's any topics you want us to talk about for you as well, just tell us. We get them added to our list of what we go through, and we'll just keep plugging away and covering as many different topics as we can.
Open 6 weeks away.
Yeah.
Who's
6
winning?
weeks?
I think it's about 6 weeks now. Yeah.
Who's winning? Who's winning? Is in England or in Europe or between us three?
Between us three.
I think
Phil's doing secret training, secret bodyweight training.
Yeah. Phil still snatched 130 in first day back in the gym, so we all may as well give up now.
Just bodyweight training, snatches 130, buzzing. Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. Right, guys. Thanks very much.
No problem.
And we'll catch you all soon.
See ya.